I'm really excited to be at D10E because personally I'm a decentralization maximalist. I think that anything that can be decentralized should be decentralized, and that's why we're building a decentralized payment network. There's kind of two big problems at the moment in the blockchain space. Obviously, one of them we all know is scaling. Being able to handle transaction volumes for large-scale applications is something that we're not yet ready for. But there's a second issue, which is volatility. And we're attempting to tackle volatility because we believe that if you don't have a stable unit of account with which to be able to interact with decentralized systems, it's going to prevent adoption. So in order to understand where sort of the genesis of this volatility came from, we need to go back to Bitcoin and what the purpose of Bitcoin was. So if you read the Bitcoin white paper, and hopefully a lot of people here have, you'll see that the title of the Bitcoin white paper is a peer-to-peer electronic cash system. So if we break that down to sort of understand where that came from and what the sort of intention was with Satoshi in building Bitcoin, we see peer-to-peer, which is permissionless. Right? So the idea was that you didn't need a central authority to administer the network. You didn't need someone who's going to say, I'll actually move your money or move your value between these two parties. Any two parties anywhere would be able to transact with one another. The second component of it is electronic. So the idea was that this would be able to happen over the internet and that it would be fast and borderless. Again, anyone anywhere would be able to transact, transfer value. They wouldn't need to worry about having a bank or an intermediary or someone else to help them to process those transactions. Now, on the fast side, obviously, there's some arguments about how fast Bitcoin is and how scalable it is, and we've got various solutions like the Lightning Network and other things that are being worked on. But compared to the Swift system that it was designed to sort of compete with, it is significantly faster. It's significantly easier. When you get to the third component, though, cash system, this is where you have some issues. So we all know that Bitcoin is not fully anonymous. It's pseudonymous. And Satoshi himself actually said, if you want true anonymity with Bitcoin, what you need to do is use a one-time address. Now, one-time addresses back then were a little bit easier to come by because you could mine Bitcoin and you could start with basically a fresh wallet and spend from there. But unfortunately now, mining being somewhat consolidated, it's a lot harder for that to happen. So anonymity with Bitcoin is quite difficult to achieve, but there are people out there, there are projects out there, Zcash, Monero, and others that are trying to solve these problems, right? Now, this is going to be a confronting statement, but what that sort of shows is that Bitcoin is not perfect. So hopefully no one's going to storm the stage right now, but Bitcoin as a system is not a perfect system. There are ways to improve Bitcoin. The final component is stability. So Bitcoin as a cash system is effectively untenable. And the reason for that is that if you have cash and you take a $10 bill out of your wallet and you say, I'm going to go and buy a coffee, you have an expectation that that $10 bill will have a pretty stable purchasing power over the short to medium term. Unfortunately, Bitcoin does not achieve that. And the reason why it doesn't achieve that is because it's got a fixed monetary policy. So when we look at what Bitcoin was and why it has that fixed monetary policy and where it came from, we kind of get an idea of where potentially the solution might lie. So Bitcoin was a response to centralized digital currencies. So e-gold, which is basically a guy in Florida that said, send me all your gold and I'll put it in my garage and I'll issue tokens against that, which went really well until the government decided that they actually didn't want a guy making his own currency down in Florida, and so they shut it down. Another solution was DigiCash, where effectively there was a whole bunch of internal issues, and again, it was a centralized system, and as soon as the centralization broke down and as soon as the people administering the system failed, the system failed. And so all of the currency that was out there basically went to zero. And so Satoshi was obviously aware of these solutions and knew that the solution to creating a digital currency that would be viable was to remove the need for a central authority. So A, the government couldn't come and shut it down, which the government has yet to be able to come and shut Bitcoin down, which is good. That's why we're all here. That you would be able to have transactional immutability, that you didn't need to trust the other person that you're transacting with, and that you would effectively have a permissionless system. Anyone would be able to use it. You could come in, interact with the system, and leave. Now, in order to achieve that, the way that it was basically created was to create the blockchain. So the blockchain has a block reward. The block reward is what encourages people to interact with the system. But in order to get people excited about using the system, the block reward is fixed at 21 million Bitcoins. So those 21 million Bitcoins, Satoshi said, well, if you have some early, you're going to do really well because as adoption happens and as people get excited about it and as the demand ramps up, then the price of Bitcoin will go up, which is exactly what's happened. And that's why, again, we're all here because Bitcoin has created sort of the path for us to follow. The issue with that, though, obviously, is that volatility prevents people from being able to use it for normal purchases, right? So what we're looking at is how can you have decentralization? How can you maintain that? How can you get all the benefits of Bitcoin without having volatility? So when we look at other centralized digital currencies, Amex, and this might be a little bit sort of confusing. Some people say, Amex isn't a currency, it uses US dollars, right? But what Amex actually is a digital currency. It's very similar to DigiCash. The way that it works is they've got a database. That database is a proprietary database that has a ledger of all the transactions that are happening. And outside of that database is where US dollars are actually transacted. So they don't actually use US dollars within the system. They have their own Amex bucks, if you will, that exist inside this database. So the reason why Amex has been able to get away with this and the reason why the system works is because A, they work within the existing financial system, which is something that Satoshi didn't want to do. He wanted to exist outside of the normal financial system. The other reason why it works is because it's a $100 billion company or close to a $100 billion company. So merchants who are interacting with the Amex network are confident that Amex has the ability, because they're such a large company, to actually settle all of the debts and administer the transactions and make it work. So the question that we ask is there a way to decentralize this? To take the best parts of this payment network, Amex or PayPal or any other closed-loop payment network, and create a decentralized system? And the solution to that is effectively to use the fees that they generate, which is where Amex gets their value from. They create fees, they have card issuance, they have interest charges. All of those things get rolled up, and they make about $5 billion in profit a year off $35 billion in revenue. So the question that we asked is, can you take that model, can you remove all of the costs from it, can you create a system that is decentralized where the fees that the network is generating in transactions, instead of going to a centralized entity like Amex or PayPal or Visa or someone like that, go to a collateral pool? Because ultimately, the trust in a network like this comes from the fact that you have a large pool of value, in the case of the share register of Amex or whatever, that is basically saying, we are so large, we're worth so much money that we can guarantee that we can administer this network. And so what we've said is we're going to create a system that will have decentralized stability. We'll generate fees, we'll take those fees that are created from people transacting in the network, and we'll send them to collateral holders. So the collateral holders, in order to be able to interact with the network, lock up their collateral and issue stablecoins against it. So the way that this works is at any given time, you have a collateral value that is on the blockchain. You can see it, it's transparent. You don't need to wait for an audit as you do with centralized stablecoins. You don't need to worry about whether the system is fully collateralized. You can look at all times and see that the collateral value that exists within the network is sufficient at all times to settle all of the transactions that are going on within the system in the stablecoin. And if you do that, then what you get is something that is ideally financially viable. You can have a system where everyone can have confidence, they can transact, it's permissionless, it doesn't require a central authority to administer it. The collateral value is distributed amongst a whole bunch of people that are holding it, which means that there's no single point of failure. And we can basically build a system which, through transaction fees, generates enough revenue to sufficiently collateralize the system to make it work. So the reason why we want to build this system, and the reason why this is important, is because as a protocol, if you have something that is stable, you can create a system that other entities, other projects, and this is why we're here, to talk to projects that are looking to build basically any project where someone needs to pay for things. We want to be the protocol for that so that you can build your system on top of, in our case, the Ethereum blockchain, and on top of our protocol, and effectively allow people to transact in something that tracks the value of the US dollar. So if you're a decentralized insurance platform, for example, you can't build a long-term contract that's based off Ethereum because if the price of Ethereum moves, the contract might be blown up. So what we want to do is enable a protocol that allows you effectively to transact with a USD tracked decentralized stablecoin. So you're not creating centralization, not creating issues for your protocol or for your platform or for your app. You're able to actually transact. So if you're building a project like that that needs a medium of exchange that you want to be stable, please come and talk to us. That's what we're trying to do. Thanks very much.